I'm super excited to be here with Matt/Griff, Matthew Griffin. I had the great privilege of going to a Google direct-to-consumer summit several months ago and was so inspired by many of the reasons we're all inspired here today in the room, which was, focus on purpose and really bringing, even something larger than that, like a mission to life and sort of how to do that and really bootstrap it and make it happen. The other is that, we talk a lot about, sort of the rise of the disruptors and direct-to-consumer brands and how that's changing the way that we need to think about communicating and engaging and interacting with consumers. And then the third is that, not only do we need to connect differently with these millennial consumers, but also in terms of attracting them into the workforce. There was a study by Deloitte in June that was published in Forbes that said 87% of millennials would sacrifice a financial sort of situation for value alignment, actually believing in what the company does and impact. So you even heard that when Jill was talking with Chris about how important purpose has become. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm not going to talk that much because I can do that, but I shouldn't. But Griff is here, and just a couple bullet points about Griff before he really tells you about himself, which is fascinating.
Yeah, Ben teed this one up pretty hard yesterday, so don't screw this up.
Yeah, I know. He already got a free shout out from Ben, so, I'm like chopped liver. 2018 most influential veterans. 2018 YPO Real Leaders Top 100 Global Visionaries. He gave an amazing TED Talk in 2015, so if you get the chance, definitely go visit that on YouTube. He is also Google's most requested and highly acclaimed external speaker. So he's a badass, basically. So I'm going to I would love for you to talk about your history, how you got here, and then we can talk a little bit more about combat flip-flops and the future.
Right on. So just in our community, we're typically fairly humble, and Shannon pumped me up yesterday, and she says, all right, you got to talk about all your stuff. And so from Iowa originally. I'm fourth generation military. I went to West Point in 1997, graduated in 2001, thinking I was going to go into the Cold War. A few months later, September 11th happened, which then propelled us into special operations. I had my sights set on the 75th Ranger Regiment, which is the most elite infantry unit in the world. And I took the job as a fire support officer in Alpha Company 275. And just in a grand scale of things, there's only 9 of those people that ever exist at any one time. So I had one of those positions, which was a really amazing and responsible job. And I did 3 tours to Afghanistan. And then I did a tour to Iraq. And I have to say that by the time that I got to Iraq, I saw the futility of how we were fighting this war, what we were doing as a nation. I'd probably emptied my karma cup 3 or 4 times, and it just wasn't healthy. Wife, 2 kids that I never got to see, and I just didn't really see the war ending, so I decided to get out. That was in 2006. I did the standard military bounce off the bottom a few times thing, transitioned through a whole bunch of different jobs, and ended up back in Afghanistan, working in capacity building and putting in clinics and pharmacies in developing nations. So I was working in Afghanistan, Iraq, Jordan, Kenya, Sudan, DRC. And the thing that I saw there was jobs, and it ended up propelling me to starting a small business called Combat Flip-Flops. So that was it.
Told you, he's a badass. Talk a little bit about, I was recently in a meeting and somebody said you should be a mission with a company, not a company with a mission. As I think about that, I feel like there's no more place spot on than basically what you're exemplifying every single day. Can you talk about the mission and the purpose of Combat Flip-Flops?
So we're going to have to just break it down here a little bit, if you don't mind.
Please do.
So in the Army, there's everybody talks, they say, we're going to talk strategy or talk tactics. And if you don't know the difference, strategy is where you're going, and tactics are how you get there. When you have a purpose, it should be what you want to see happen in the next 100 years. you should be able to work the rest of your life and make a dent in it and leave people motivated behind you to finish the job. That's a real purpose. So when you say, I'm going to live a life of purpose, you should say, I'm going to live a life where I'm in pursuit of something that I'm unlikely ever going to see come to fruition. And then your mission is your tactics, is how you're going to get there. Because a company's mission, their blocking and tackling, their campaigns, their strategies, their objectives, their finances, like that's your mission. That's things you can sell to your business and your employees and your staff, and you can give them very tactical, clear directions to accomplish it. But everybody's accomplishing this mission in pursuit of a long-term goal that hopefully everybody's bought into. And so when I really go back to it, like our purpose is to end armed conflict. I think the old strategy of using high explosives and small projectiles to force your will into somebody else is a barbaric means, or where we're at as a species today. I think it's stupid. I think we have enough technology and knowledge to be able to communicate and work with one another to avoid that forever. We can do that now. And our mission right now is we intend on ending the war in Afghanistan by creating jobs and funding little girls' education. And so that's how we do it. So purpose, end armed conflict, mission is create jobs and education in Afghanistan.
So can you tell us what Combat Flip-Flops is?
So Combat Flip-Flops, we're a fashion and lifestyle company. And we started, long story, but I ended up in a combat boot factory in Kabul, Afghanistan. And I saw 300 people working. And each one of those people supported 5 to 13 family members. So there were thousands of people supported by this one economic opportunity secured by our service members and soldiers. And it was the first positive thing I'd seen after losing all of my friends, watching everybody get hurt, all the conflicts, all the time away. And I was inspired that these people were going to live in a life better than they had in previous generations. We call that the American dream. They were providing a life for their families better than they had for themselves. And just, long-term business strategy, I asked the factory manager, what's going to happen when the war ends? And he says, man, we're just going to shut it all down. Nobody's going to want to buy anything in Afghanistan. And I went from, inspiration to absolute fury because we were going to repeat the same mistakes over and over as a country and just not fulfill our promises. And I looked down on this table, and there was this combat boot sole with a flip-flop thong punched through it. And it was the ugliest and coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I'd looked at it and I picked it up and I was like, man, a combat flip-flop? Americans would buy that shit, right? It's swords to plowshares. We're gonna go combat boots to flip-flops. It's the Marshall Plan in World War II, but flip-flops in Afghanistan right now. So I set the flip-flop down, I walked out of the factory, I got on GoDaddy, and go figure, nobody put the URL together, combat flip-flops. So it was open. And so was the Facebook page and the Twitter handle and everything else. So we just, for $2.99, we secured everything and we started a company making combat boots or combat flip-flops in a combat boot factory in Afghanistan. And now we've expanded to making footwear in Colombia. We make jewelry out of landmines in Laos. We make knit products in Syrian refugee camps. We're trying to find some products in Iraq. And we're always hunting for dicey little areas to make cool and fashion lifestyle products that we can inspire mindful consumers to purchase in order to create jobs and peace and progress in these areas. So that's what we do.
So you are the co-founder of Combat Flip-Flops, and you are obviously have been bootstrapping this whole thing. How do you get people on board with your mission? Because ultimately, the benefit is if people buy your products, it helps to further your mission, right? So how do you do that in a day and age where it is increasingly more difficult to connect with people that, there's a lot of brands much bigger than you that have a lot more money than you that changed the ways in which we connect. How have you really brought sort of your purpose, your mission, your brand to life to date?
There's two things. One is proof. The only thing that really matters in this world is proof. Like if you say you're going to do something, people go, no, you're never going to be able to do it. And then we went out and did it. We're proving that it works. I mean, there was a half-page article in the Wall Street Journal that said, these guys are going to fail. They suck. I mean, literally, that's what the Wall Street Journal said about us. And go figure, 5 years later, we're still here and we're growing. So when you hear a crazy idea, like, these are special operations guys and they're going to war zones to make flip-flops to put little girls to school. Like, it sounds crazy when you say it out loud. It really does. But when you're actually doing it and you're taking photos and we video document everything, and then we just keep doing it over and over again, and people can't get us to quit. I think people are looking for those types of persistent stories. They're looking for that kind of, drive in their life, because we all get hammered down in our own lives. It just seems like it's endless. All the hits just keep rolling. They keep coming in. And I guess if you're out there and you're recording it and you're doing it and you're sharing it with others, encouraging them to drive forward, eventually they're going to push you forward. And we've just done enough of that over the years through horrible social media marketing where people have, seen what we've done. And the other thing, I think it came back down to our first 3 months of being a business. You're like, hey, we're going to be just like Tom's, right? We're going to be just like Tom's shoes. So, we used to go find and get a hold of a lot of people in our old job. So we would just go find somebody from Tom's. And we ended up finding the first employee at Tom's, and his name is Jake Strom. And we called him up and said, hey, here's what we're doing. Can you give us some mentorship or some help? And he sat us down and he said, it's just so funny being here at this conference. And he said, there was a point when Blake went from being the chief executive officer to being the chief storytelling officer. And that's what really grew the company. And it was a mindset we had as a business between our co-founders that there was going to be a point in time where I had to stop running the blocking and tackling of the company and then be the outward face of the brand and going out and talking at Rotary clubs, talking at elementary schools, and then eventually working yourself up to talking at Google or talking here and sharing the message with enough people, because this is just a lot cheaper than spending thousands of dollars a day on social media. And it's way more effective because we get to sit and chat and talk and answer questions, and you get to see it, you get to feel it, you get to know that it's true. And we've just kept doing that for year after year. And then we've grew into a multi-million-dollar business, and we've put over 600 girls in school so far. So it works. Yep.
Can you get a little bit tactical, right, in terms of how you've brought the story to life and some recent successes even that I know you have had some leading the witness here.
Yeah.
But it would be really great if you could talk about that.
PR for us was big. The just media, getting into a magazine, getting into, some online article or whatever that people are going to read. We didn't have enough followers, but we could leverage other people's followers to drive them back to our website and brand. We'd acquire the users, and then we'd remarket back to them when we had product in stock. So we just kept doing that over and over, and it just seemed like we were doing it ad nauseum, and it was just like little bumps, little bumps, little bumps. And then one day I was in LA, and my PR lady said, hey, you got to meet this guy named Wes. He writes for this publication called Gizmodo, and I don't know who Gizmodo is. We sit down, we have an hour-long conversation. He gets up, finishes his beer, and he says, all right, I'm going to go party in Vegas with Billy Idol. I'll see you. And so I think I'm never going to see this guy again. 2 days later, my website crashes on and off for 4 days. Boom, 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 sales. And so it just kept racking up. And then we just, we sold out a product. We had to, keep the customer experience positive. Hey, I'm sorry, you bought product. We'll deliver it to you in 3 months. We promise. So customer service and customer experience is really important to us because we've had to do that for years. And then that led to Shark Tank, because Shark Tank read the Gizmodo article, and then we got onto Shark Tank, and we had no experience in that kind of growth. We grew 450% that year on cash because still nobody would fund us because of where we manufacture. So that was a huge growth year. And we had, how do you leverage those successes? And that year optimized our business. And so we grew all the way through 2018, which was kind of a tough year. And then we just got funded by a great nonprofit bank that supports mission-driven businesses. So we're finally going to be able to keep inventory on the deck and really grow the business and market consistently, because and you guys are all marketers. You guys understand how persistent marketing pays off. Well, we would market for a week and then we'd sell everything, and we couldn't land product for another 3 months. And then so you couldn't really market behind it. And so now we're going to be able to just keep it going up. And the blocking and tackling is just a lot of getting up early, scheduling your photo shoots. You guys know how it is, organizing your campaigns, watching your spends, watching what ads aren't working, and then turning them on and off and just making sure you're generating a decent return on ad spend. which is just weird for me to sit here and talk to you guys because you guys deal with way more zeros than I do in a day than I probably do in a year. And just as owner of a business, like this is like legitimate cash that we have to put out into partners in order to have it return. And people typically describe me in these types of meetings as being intense, but I have to sit down with marketers and say, look, like you spend these dollars, they need to come back, because if they don't, like little girls don't go to school in Afghanistan. Like you need to understand how important this is to us. We need a marketing partner that takes it as seriously as we do. And if you can't deliver, we understand, but we need to deliver on our promises. So when you're starting to deal with mission-driven businesses and purpose-driven businesses here and CEOs, you got to understand that you might have to take a look at their business a little bit differently in how you work with them, because they really care, they feel, they bleed their business. And if it's not fulfilling the mission, then you're not fulfilling the mission. So that's where we're at.
I think you bring up an interesting point, right? So as brands who are either established, right, more traditional brands who may have started with a purpose or sort of trying to reimagine how that purpose can come to life in modern day, commitment, consistency is very important. This sort of a two-sided question. One is, how do you sort of maintain your North Star as you do start to scale, right? You have some funding now, like you will be able to scale and grow, and even at some of your recent successes with the book and the film and some of those things, like how will you help to keep your North Star? And then in addition to that, on the flip side, when you think about kind of modern day marketing, right, and sort of the brands that are, looking to really define their brand values. I come from a long history, which I think is so hilarious, because that I worked for Mark Burnett, right? So it's like a weird stars aligning thing.
As you're wearing stars.
As I'm wearing stars, yes. It's all manifesting. Is this notion of like understanding what your brand values are, how can you credibly and authentically tell your story, which is a lot of what we're hearing today. And I did a lot with brands at StoryLab and Kara, and now obviously at Honest. Tell us a little bit about what your theories would be on that. Let's get provocative.
I think if you're a company and you're trying to just keep up with everybody else and the legitimate companies that are pushing purpose and mission-driven businesses because it's the thing to do right now, it's not going to work. It really bleeds from the top down. Like, if you step into our office, when we make a corporate sale, like I can do the math in my head immediately when Amazon buys 5,000 reusable shopping bags from us for their swag and their hiring events. Like, hey, you put 40 girls in school with that purchase, right on Amazon. Like, that is always our first response. Whenever a big corporate purchase comes through, we sit down in our morning meetings. Every meeting is whatever we sell, whatever our metrics are, like they always back out against girls going to school. Like, forefront, that's how we do it. That's how it's stated in meetings. That's always the thing that we talk about. And it's like, we bleed it. We believe it. We think this is the right thing to do. And you're never going to step into a meeting with any of our co-founders or any of our senior executives where that isn't the most important thing to us. And I think like you have to lead it in your regular life too. It's not something where you can show up and do it 9 to 5 because you're putting on a play or an act. You really have to believe it. In my spare time, I ran a team called Team 5, and what we did is we take special operations doctors and medics and we go to developing nations to do clinic work and cleft lip repair, right? And like I spend 2 weeks a year out of the business doing that and probably a quarter preparing and fundraising for it. But the company knows, like, hey, I run a critical job in the company as CEO, but like, no, we're disappearing. And each one of our people in our company, they have something like that where they do that type of role or mission where they know they have to give back. And it's so important for everybody in our company to have that in their own life. And it only just fuels what you're doing in your business, and it drives everybody else to push themselves and one-up each other to be better, to create that margin in your time, to be able to pursue those personal and professional goals. And if you just aren't bleeding it as a leader of your company, your staff is not going to bleed it. Like, that's the only way that I can say it. That's the ugly truth, that if you don't believe and fulfill and bleed that purpose, you're never going to see it trickle down through your organization. It's not something you can put on paper. It's something that's got to be in your heart.
So tell us a little bit about what's next for combat flip-flops?
Well, apparently Ben's going to.
I know. You have a new
yeah.
documentary coming out,
Yeah.
so stay tuned.
So again, we just got funded, and it's a fun thing for us. So this is the first time we've actually been able to like consistently deliver market, get ahead of campaigns, and do that and push forward. So we have that coming along. We're doing a kind of a philanthropic mission where we're going to jump a Gold Star mom. So a buddy that I served with, he passed on his 14th deployment. We're going to free fall his mom into Normandy on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So we're going to do that. We got a team going to Afghanistan right now. They're going to be putting up some first descents on some mountains in Afghanistan for Adventure Not War. And then we're also involved in some, fingers crossed, some major needle movers in Afghanistan in order to be able to drive massive economic and social change in the country. So those are the things that we're really pushing forward on right now. And we have no idea what we're doing, and we're just kind of making it up along the way. So we're figuring it out. But yeah, I mean, we're going to try to make it look good and try to help as many people as possible. Yeah.
You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you sort of one more question, and then we can kind of go to Q&A, because I think Griff's such a fascinating person that I'm hopeful there are some questions out there that would be great to answer. I've done a lot of service work and sort of philanthropy and things like that, both obviously professionally, but also personally. In your line of work and what you need to do next, what is it that you truly need?
So I'm going to have a task for you guys, so that way you guys know what it's like to bleed it and feel it. And then I'm going to have two other kind of big asks. But as far as the personal one, like if you guys really want to feel what it feels like, as you guys are walking around this week at Sundance, or as you're traveling home in the airport, eventually you're going to look up and you're going to make awkward eye contact with somebody. It always happens. It does. When that happens, just give them a smile. Don't make it awkward, but give them a little bit of a grin. Be that positive force in the world. And then you're going to watch them turn around and mirror that back to you. And then as the leaders of your companies, as your people and your staff, you're going to start to begin to see what it feels like to have that positive force within you go out into the world, and then you're going to watch it come back. So that's a task I'm going to give to every one of you. And I guarantee you're going to feel better by the end of the week. First hairy, audacious ask is, as much as I hate to say it, celeb influencers are like where it's at. If you think that anybody who might be aligned with special operations guys, like putting people to work in Afghanistan and putting little girls to school and would like wear our product and post it on social, I'd appreciate it. I know it's a big ask, but there. And then the really big ask, because we saw one yesterday, and I keep asking Google for one, but like, I would love a Super Bowl ad. I want it red, white, and blue and patriotic AF, right? Like I want it to be good.
Dream small, Griff. Dream small. I think those are very good goals.
Thank you.
And I think you're in an interesting room of people who actually, sort of surround those parts of the industry, which is so fantastic and why I love this event so much every year. And so, I'd love to thank you also for your service, because obviously, like, you have done made a tremendous impact. I hope to make like a teeny tiny bit of that someday. Can we open up the floor for questions? Does anyone have a question for Griff? Or an offer for a Super Bowl commercial, perhaps?
Yes, the Super Bowl commercial right there, blonde and the glasses, yes.
We're on. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how you overcome the challenge of being an American in a war zone foreign country where Americans aren't always viewed as the white hats. How has that impacted how you do business?
Are you ready for the real brutal answer? It's the first rule of leadership. Don't be an asshole. No, like really, the Americans, we tend to go into places and we tend to speak really loudly and we tend to like push our view on other places. And I think when you go to these places, you have to go in with the intent and the mindset of everybody wants to succeed, everybody wants to do good. The people that you're doing business with, the reason they're doing business is because they want to succeed to put food on the table for their family. And if you go into every business meeting and every interaction knowing that at the end of it, you guys are both going to succeed and you guys are both going to help each other's families, they tend to go a lot smoother. And I mean, that's just how we base all of our fundamental discussions. And then you should probably like learn a little bit about their religion, learn 5 or 10 words of their language, and like make an effort to be culturally sensitive. And there hasn't been a place where we haven't been greeted with warm hugs and smiles, and it still goes on to this day. And we follow each other on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, Griff.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
This is awesome.